I'll call the meeting to order at 10:09 a.m. I'm Rebecca Brill, I'm the city clerk. We'll do a roll call of the Board of Review members. Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Winter Cooley,
Present.
Robert Hagelin,
Present.
Randy Casa,
Here.
Sharon Pringeville.
Here.
Five present. The third item on our agenda is the confirmation of the appropriate Board of Review and open meeting notices. There's a copy of that which is being shown on our board here. I believe it was done, you scroll down a little, on the 13th of May. Yes. Rebecca, is there anything else I need to do besides say that we did that? No, publication, okay. And then the next item is the selection of a Board of Review chairperson. Are there any nominations for the chairperson?
I nominate Wayne Clark based upon his years of experience in the city of West Hollywood.
I second that nomination. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wayne Clark, the chairperson. Would you like to take over the agenda at this time? Or do you
Sure,
want-
thank you. And thank you for your support, I appreciate it. The next item is a selection for Board of Review vice chairperson.
I nominate Winter Coley.
We have the nomination of Winter.
I'll second that.
We have a second from Randy. Any other nominations? I'll call the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Winter, you're at it again. Before continuing, what I'd like for the record is to have the rest of the good folks that are here read into the record relative to our roll call, so we have a statement of who's with us. Can you handle that, Rebecca?
Sure, we have Jason Williams, who's the city assessor, Nick Serwin, who is representing the assessor, myself, the city clerk, and then Rebecca Hammond, who is representing the board. So if the board has any questions, we should be directing them to Rebecca.
Thank you. And again, I'll turn to you, to verify the members have met the mandatory training requirements.
4 of the 5 members have completed the training.
Thank you. Number 7, verify that the city has an ordinance for the confidentiality of income and expense information provided to the assessor under Wisconsin statute 70.47 7AF.
On the screen right now, you'll see a copy of the ordinance that we have in our municipal code. It's under 2.40, the Board of Review sub 3.
Therefore, we're in compliance.
Yes.
Thank you. And a review of new laws. Who will handle that?
I will.
Thank you.
There were 2 new acts passed, Act 185 and Act 140. There are some relevant amendments to how notice would proceed. We have already made our notice in compliance with the new law. The other major new addition that was in Act 185 is that rather than requiring payment having already been made or a payment plan having already been started in order to challenge an excessive assessment before filing that date has now been moved to October 1st because of the COVID situation. So as long as people have a payment made or payment plan started by October 1st, 2020, they are still able to challenge excessive assessment. Those are the only things that have been updated or new.
I don't think we got
Any
any
questions
requests
of
for
Attorney Hammer?
telephone
Does that
ceremony
mean after
or
October
written,
first,
so
they
you
can
report that
file-
none were submitted,
a request to come to the board of review?
then,
So the board of
so this
review
is just
process is
reaffirming the
now,
policy.
the excessive assessment is usually a separate thing that gets handled by the city attorney's office. Above and beyond, which have already existed, always existed above and beyond this process.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Attorney Hammer. Number 9, reaffirmation of policy on procedure for sworn telephone and sworn written testimony requests. We've worked with this before, but we have to reaffirm the policies.
If I can interject, my understanding is we don't have any formal written policies as to whether or not we will permit telephone testimony in board of review proceedings. It's kind of up to the board whether they want to adopt a certain procedure, certain requirements or showings before they will allow somebody to offer telephone testimony. You don't have to do that. We can do it on a case-by-case basis as is requested. This would just be if we did have a policy on the books that we reaffirm that and discuss that at this time.
Maybe,
I thought we did have,
that's my understanding that we have these policies. What about the rest of you?
Certainly was my understanding.
We've had these policies for a number of years.
Do you have it written somewhere? Because I don't know that I've seen it. That's where I was coming from.
Just take too much file. I think I got it right here.
I have it.
I'll complete.
I don't recall.
Last year, it's not anything different than statute required, as far as I can tell.
So I am reviewing the procedure you guys have operated under previously. Essentially requires a timely notice of intent to appear, a timely objection form regarding the property assessment value, and a completed request to testify by telephone or submit a sworn written statement. So those are all items that are required under the statute anyways to request the written or sworn testimony, phone testimony. What this is referring to is if there were any more specific policies, if A is present, B is present, C is present, then we will grant telephone testimony. That's sort of what I meant when I said we don't have a formal policy, is that there are no you have to prove that this is the case before we'll allow. These are all the things that are required to, frankly, the first two are required to even be able to have the board review hearing of the person challenging the assessment. The second one is basically, the third one requesting the specific form about why they're requesting, just gives us more information about whether we want to ultimately grant that request.
Okay,
So we can affirm this, and this is essentially the policy that has to be followed by the statute anyways before we can grant telephone testimony. The question is if we want to do anything beyond that to say that we will only grant telephone or sworn testimony under certain circumstances. We could do that, we could do that on a case basis. That's what I was talking about.
okay. What is your recommendation?
I think either way, as long as you're following consistent policies about when you do or don't grant the telephone testimony, it's not necessary that it has to be in writing exactly when you'll grant it, as long as it's done fairly and across the board. We don't have any disparities about who's allowed to testify and who's not. Frankly, in these times, I would imagine that we would probably want to keep that open even more and be more accommodating given the current health crisis, as long as people are complying with the requirements and giving us good explanations of why they want it and feel confident that we're getting good testimony, that we're not gonna, have any issues technologically or anything like that. We might want to keep it kind of open and not back ourselves into a corner with a written formal policy. That would be my advice.
So to interpret what you just said, we should do it on a case-by-case basis,
Correct.
and therefore there's nothing to do with this time.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I know that I had gotten up and I had a brief sidebar almost with Attorney Hamlock, and all I was doing was reviewing that policy as well. And it does seem to be consistent with the state requirements. I don't think Jason or I have any objection with being mindful of the COVID crisis going on and reviewing those on a case-by-case basis.
Therefore, if the board agrees, we will proceed on a case-by-case basis. Do you have concerns about that?
Do we need to approve this? Or we just,
We can make that our policy that they have to have filed the intent to appear, they have to file the objection timely, and they have to file that form stating why they're requesting the telephone or sworn written testimony. Correct. I think that's a good idea.
okay, I would like to reaffirm the policy that we have currently.
We have a motion to reaffirm the current policy. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. The next is the reaffirmation of policy or on procedure for waiver of order review hearing requests.
I would imagine it's a very similar consideration. They have to file their intent, their proper objection. And then if they are filing a request for a waiver, the proper documents to allow us to the board to make a decision regarding that request.
We reaffirmed our policy last July 10th, 2019. And are you familiar with that policy? Sort of make that more wide.
Okay.
guidance counselor?
That one is a little bit different from the prior one. There is some enumerated conditions on the second page that the Board of Review is finding themselves to consider when considering a waiver. I think they're reasonable considerations that will allow the board to remain fair when they are determining whether to grant a waiver. So I would recommend, if the board wants to follow that policy, that is safe to adopt.
Fellow board members, are you familiar with this?
No.
No, I haven't.
I'd like to request a copy, please.
Copies?
Sure, I think we can get copies somewhere. Thanks for talking.
Yes.
Wayne, will we have gotten that last year at our meeting? A copy of that? I should have grabbed that last year's stuff. That's why you're the chair, because you do such a good job.
It is my recollection that last year we had instances where we did approve waivers.
Yes,
And before doing that, we had a policy, in fact, that we had voted on and approved, which was in fact pretty much a copy of what the Board of Review had required us to do. We followed their plan, their proposed suggestions, and had that taken care of. So I guess I'm just a little bit confused as to why that isn't working now. And I think that would also go for the one with the telephone. We had telephone conversations last year with one of the objectors. And before doing that, we approved a policy that said we go ahead and do it under certain conditions.
well, that's my understanding as well.
I agree.
This is just to make sure we are clear of what policies we're following this year. So that's why we kind of have to make sure everybody knows what exactly is expected. And I know you guys have done this for several years, so you probably already know those things, but this is just kind of a formality to formally adopt those.
I'd like to see what those are that we're formally adopting.
That's what Ms. Grill is making copies of.
At this point, since the clerk, it's being recorded, this is Attorney Nick Sherwin. Since this is being recorded, it's less of a concern, but Attorney Grill is, or not Attorney, Rebecca Grill is acting as the clerk in this situation, and so she's the formal record keeper of any motions or anything that takes place. So I think we should wait. We can have discussions, but I think we should wait on any votes or anything until the Board of Review gets this document and Rebecca returns, if that's okay.
Take an extra moment, Nick, and explain what's going on today technology-wise. We've got this stuff on the screens. I see there's audio set up. What's being broadcast?
Yeah, I'll defer first to Jason and then, or the assessor, and then I can fill in if I have any additions.
Mr. Chair, so how we have this set up is we have these two monitors in the council chambers, and we're going to display the information that you need to see that's on the agenda. The speakers are so people can hear your voices in the virtual Zoom meeting. And if anyone shows up and is sitting in room 128, that audio will catch them and broadcast that for them down there. So in order for us to maintain the social distancing, you've seen that you're spread out the way we are here. The chairs are available there for people who may come in here. And then room 28 is set up to not only view, but hear the proceedings in here. So that's what's going on with these speakers and the monitors.
So this is going out over the city channel?
We're on YouTube right now, and there's a live Zoom meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think it is.
If you would please review the document that anything in this document that you would recommend be altered, changed?
No, in either one of them. I know we did already hold the vote on the sworn telephone and sworn written testimony. If you look at page 2, there is a list of criteria that policy requires to be considered before granting the request. I think those are all advisable and see no issues with the board considering those criteria before granting the request. And the same and the waiver request, there is a similar list on page 2 under item 2, listing the criteria for the board to consider. Part 1 of both procedures are the statutorily required items anyways before those requests can be made. So those are also acceptable.
Fellow board members, questions, discussion?
These are the policies and procedures that we've operated on in the past, and they seem to have served us well, and there's been nothing in the new training that says anything should be changed in there, nor has any changes been brought to our attention. I recommend and move that we accept this policy.
There's a motion to accept. And again, any further discussion? Those in favor?
Was there a second? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
Was there a second? I didn't hear one.
Oh,
I second.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your guidance. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Recommends adoption of both, or affirmation of both policies, correct?
Yes. Those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? It passed. Thank you. Next. 10, reaffirmation of policy on procedure for waiver of board of review hearing requests.
I believe that's what we just did.
That's we just took,
We just did
9
that.
and 10.
Yes, okay, thank you. Next, I think we're ready to hear from the city assessor filing and summary of annual assessment report by assessor's office. Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So before you, you have a hard copy of this report, and it's also on the 2 monitors. So this is the annual summary of this past year's assessment cycle, and you'll see in the first line that the city saw an overall increase of approximately $43.5 million, which equates to a 1.19% increase in total assessed value. Residential saw modest gains, is approximately $2 million, and that was primarily from building permit improvements like kitchen remodel, bathroom remodel, new garages, things of that nature. Most of the value came from the commercial side, primarily Element 84, the new apartment buildings down here off of 84th Street. 6 Points Apartments came online. We also saw the new car wash on Highway 100 along with the new Quick Trip. And then we also have partial completion of the hotel on Lincoln Avenue. So that there comprises the new construction that we'll see and makes up most of this increase here. Personal property actually went up after declining for the past few years. It went up. Most of the value from that increase was from the TIF districts. Nothing major within those numbers. It's just we had some new assets come online. Down towards the bottom of the first page, open book summary. We had 33 open book appointments. Of those, 10 reductions were granted, and the remaining 23 were sustained. Starting on the second page is an update from last year. So you may recall that at last, sorry. I'll get to the right page on the screen so everyone else can see it. So last year, you may recall at Board of Review, we had 11 cases go to circuit court. This is an update on those 11. It's actually 8 properties because 4 of the cases are one property. They're contiguous parcels. Of those, 1 was settled. That was the Summit Place office building. We had originally assessed them at $72.9 million. After about a year of negotiations, we ended up settling at $57.892 million. 1 case did not file paperwork with the circuit court, and the remaining 9 did. All of those cases are currently active. The Hampton Inn, we've settled on a number, but it hasn't been finally agreed upon. So the Hampton Inn will drop off of this list. The remaining ones are still active cases. In fact, several of the active ones, including Wild and the mobile home and Colders, they have filed appeals again this year. So we'll get to those later when they're up. And then this next section here, this is something new, and this is a comment I'd like to make to address the coronavirus and what's been going on. So I'm just going to read this whole thing into the record. So the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, declared by the World Health Organization as a global pandemic on March 11th, 2020, is causing heightened uncertainty in both local and global market conditions. Global financial markets have seen steep declines since late February, largely on the back of the pandemic over concerns of trade disruptions and falling demand. Many countries globally have implemented strict travel restrictions and a range of quarantine and social distancing measures. Market activity is being impacted in most real estate sectors. The response to COVID-19 means that we will be faced with an unprecedented set of circumstances on which to base a value in the future. Now, bringing it back down to what's relevant to this board is that pursuant to Wisconsin state statute, the assessor shall assess all real and personal property as of the close of January 1st of each year. The 2020 assessed values are as of January 1st, 2020, and therefore pre-pandemic. Consideration should be given to the market conditions as of the effective date of value. So as all of us are aware of what's been going on, whether you've been watching the news or you've experienced it personally, there's been a major impact not only on business models, but values, whether it's how do you value product, how do you value real estate. And I think the full effects of that probably have not been fleshed out yet. So there may be people that are experiencing an impact right now, and they're thinking about the tax bill that's coming up in December. And that tax bill is based on a value that was placed on January 1st. And so by law, we need to look at the conditions as of January 1st. This time next year, now any effects that we may see in the market can be factored into next year's values. So I just wanted to make this statement, get it on the record, and point to that. Then the final sheet here is just a tally. So I have the text on the first page, but these are the numbers that provide the backing to that. So you'll see that residential improvements increased 8 basis points, 0.08%, 3.07% for commercial, and then overall is 1.19%. And then you can see down here in this area here, most of the real property improvements were in the TIF districts. And then the manufacturing values are not released until November, so they're not known today. So that's why you're not seeing manufacturing values, and why the total value here may appear to be lower because it's not factoring that in. So that concludes my annual report. It's on file with the city clerk.
Mr. Williams, I go back to the circuit court for this update. Look at the last one, Summit Place, for example, the difference being $15 million. What was the settlement?
So this property actually consisted of two properties, the main property with the office building and then an adjacent property with a parking structure. And together, those two properties equal to 72 million. So part of the negotiations was that the parking structure was part of, as a single economic unit with the office building. So the first part of the change was combining those two values. Then the second part was fine tuning things like expense ratios and cap rates and things like that. So when we got to that point, we agreed on numbers, and this is the new value.
So the $15 million difference, the settlement was what they requested?
No, what they requested was lower than this 57 million. They initially requested somewhere in the ballpark of 35 million. And then as you're going back and forth and having meetings and sharing additional information, we eventually kept getting closer, and this was the value that we agreed on.
I know I'm belaboring this, but so what is the value?
The value is at 57,892. That's the value that's placed on both properties.
And that's what the negotiation resulted in.
Correct.
30-some million, we were looking at 57 million, ended up at 57 million.
Correct.
And the other cases where it says update file 2020, there are 5 of them. Does that mean filed to the court?
No, filed with the Board of Review. So those cases will come up later on in the agenda.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Williams? Thank you for your report.
Mr. Chair, maybe Rebecca, point of information, does this need to be placed on file or we just let it ride?
The assessment roll,
The filing summary of annual assessment report, I'm not sure, I didn't know if it needed to be
I believe
an action taken.
number 12, which is the formal receipt of the assessment roll, I would imagine that we could wrap that up as, yes, we would admit this into the record as part of the receipt of the formal assessment roll.
We'll move on to number 12, which is receipt of the assessment roll by clerk from the assessor and sworn statements from the clerk. And where do we have that information other than on that board?
It's just provided on the board.
Pardon me?
It's just provided on the board for you, and the assessor has a copy of it for our files.
So what this is it's the affidavit that I'm attesting to the accuracy of the assessment roll. So I'm affixing my name to that and witness of the city clerk. And this gets attached to the assessment roll.
Are there any questions?
Where is the assessment roll at?
This is,
That's it?
that's it.
And what does that say? Should we have to look at it?
Madam Clerk, I'm imagining the same electronic documents I had access to, the board has had access to as well. They were on the city drive.
Yeah, they're, well, so
So,
that we put them in the. We don't have it out on the website, but we will, because
Yeah.
it was only accepted like 2 hours and 20 minutes ago, but we can get it out there as part of this, the minutes from this meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I'm told from the assessor that this is actually on the website, one, and then this section of the agenda is simply the affidavit and the sworn statement. Under 13, the next section, you will have a chance to examine the roll. This is a unique situation. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I believe in years past, there's actually been a book or something that could actually be reviewed or basically this has been printed out in the past, I believe. Is that accurate?
Last year we did it like this.
Like this, okay. And what some municipalities are doing are asking to review certain properties, if you're aware of them, and Jason can show you those in section 13, not quite yet. So you'll have a chance to review, look up your properties that they give a suggestion, the training, whatever it might be, to review those through section 13. So right now we're only at 12, which is the basically the assessor presenting the roll to you and the statement from the assessor.
So those are available on the assessor's webpage.
Yeah, so on May 22nd, we uploaded the final assessment roll. And then after open book, we uploaded the revised assessment roll that is now what the affidavit is attached to on Sunday. So the roll's been up on the city's website and available for public viewing.
well, I for one wasn't aware of that. And are the books going to be brought in here?
Well, we're doing it electronically this year.
All electronically?
Yes.
And I did misspeak before when I said they were here last year. For Jason, I was not the attorney for the assessor last year, but I'm told that we did it electronically last year too. I know at some point in the past there was physical paper, which I recall seeing that.
But I think that we can ask Jason to look up some properties that we may have investigated, and he can give us an explanation under 13.
Correct.
Under 13.
So we're at, thank you for that. And number 12, therefore, receipt of the assessment roll by the clerk, from the assessor and sworn statements from the clerk.
So at that stage, we're just looking for the clerk to say, I received it, and I swear I received
So
it.
we have a motion on this, number 12. There's nothing that a motion on.
I don't believe there's anything to have a motion on other than we want to have a motion that the board accepts the roll and that the roll was filed with the clerk. That's the stage we're at now. Next step is to look at the roll, and then down the line, we'll officially accept the roll. That's my understanding.
So there's nothing to do with number 12.
Correct.
All right. Any questions on number 12 before we move on? Seeing none, number 13, perform statutory duty, examine the roll. And as description or calculation errors, add omitted property and eliminate double assessed property. Historically, drawn and look at these documents, but as Ms. Prindle has pointed out, we can turn to Mr. Williams and we can pull it up, right?
Correct.
Okay. I think we now have that understood. So we have to perform our statutory duties. Does anyone have requests of Mr. Williams relative to a particular property?
I do.
Okay.
Do you want the tax key?
Sure.
445-0111-000. I just looked at properties in my own neighborhood.
So here at the bottom, you'll see, here's the tax key. Property.
Assessment, I can't really see the screen, but I noticed myself. I'm seeing the assessment at 174,100.
Yes.
That house sold, I believe in 2018, for 205,900. I realize there is an extra lot next to that property. But the assessment is so much lower than the sale price. Can you just help me understand that?
So the mechanism to make changes on the assessed value for activity like that would be to do a residential revaluation. So
Over the whole community?
over the whole community.
Okay,
So for me to go in and change the value of their home based on that sale, I'm not allowed to do that. That's called chasing a sale or sales
Okay.
chasing.
the property next door to that,
Mhm.
I have a tax key,
Okay.
445-0109-001. That property is assessed for 156,000.
Okay.
There's also an extra lot to that property. Why is there such a difference between these two next door neighbors, 174 and 156?
So when you go many, many years between revaluations, you may get differences, and that's where the inconsistency in valuation between properties gets exposed.
Okay,
And that's what a reval fixes. Because people, they make improvements, properties get sold and bought, and values, sale prices change, but assessed values may or may not change. And if you don't reval consistently over the years, you end up with things just like this.
okay. This just looks like a huge reason for people to object to their assessments because of this kind of difference. Did you send out notices of assessment for this year?
Yes, I did. So last year was a revaluation year, so there were many, many changes and a lot more people got changes. This year, we only saw value changes on 357 properties, which is less than 1% of total properties. So notices went out May 22nd to all properties that had a change of $100 or more, positive or negative.
Oh, okay,
So-
because I did not receive a notice of my assessments.
Yeah. If you didn't get it, that means your value did not change.
Okay. That's all that I have.
Mr. Williams, when will the residential reassessment take place?
Well, I think we were on track to work towards having something in place next year, but with the COVID-19 and the pandemic, that has really thrown budgets in flux and priorities have shifted. So right now, we're in discussions about doing an interim market update, which would involve me looking at market data and possibly making changes based on that rather than a full-blown reval. So a full-blown reval would involve staff and probably a contract firm canvassing the entire city, contacting every single residential property owner, trying to get both interior and exterior inspections, taking new photos, measuring every building, reviewing all permits. And that's a full reval. And something like that for a city of this size would be in excess of $1 million.
How many?
It would be in excess of $1 million. So now to try to find money for that with what's going on with our budget, there's other priorities. So we're going to try to capture market changes through analysis and through my efforts. But I don't think we've fully agreed on if that's going to be the option for next year.
What was the cost for the outside consultants to handle the commercial reval?
That was in the ballpark of around $600,000 for the 3 years of service they provided.
Mr. Williams, you iterated a couple of ways that property values might change, sale or property improvements and things like that. For my benefit, when are these things caught or applied to the assessment rules? Does that happen on a yearly basis?
So it's an option that's available to the assessor to decide when, and the constraints are simply budget, staffing, and what's going on in the market. There's a need to do a full reval of residential. And once we do that, we will now have a complete reval of commercial and residential. And then going forward, it would be monitoring the market and making tweaks and changes possibly every year. If there's a lot of changes in the market, if there aren't a lot of changes, then we wouldn't change anything. So there is a need to look at residential values because they've been selling higher and higher and higher than what they're assessed for. We looked at condos a few years ago. There's a need to look at duplexes next year. So really, you know, if you have new construction, building improvements, or the market is so out of whack where the assessed values are, that is going to trigger us taking a look at things.
In the case of a property selling for a price that's significantly different than the appraised value, there's really no set time frame for when that change will catch up with the assessment.
Right. And so this scenario is the one wrinkle in the assessment profession that causes a lot of heartburn and headaches, because I'm not allowed to chase sales for good reason. Let's say that a hotel sells for $20 million and I run into my system and I type in $20 million because it sold for that. That's a problem because that shifts the burden disproportionately to that property owner. Really, the whole point of assessing is to make sure things that are uniform and fair. So the values rise and lower together uniformly. But there's court precedent in the Markarian case that states that the sale of a subject property is the best indication of value. So I'm not supposed to change values based on a sale, but if it comes before the board of review, guess what? I have to recommend that you change the value to what it's sold for. So it's this contradictory two policies. You have court precedent and law bumping into each other. So we have a case like that coming up today. We had a property sell for less than what it's assessed for. I can't change it to that value. But when it comes before you, I'm gonna recommend that you change it to that value because it meets the tier 1 analysis. And as I said to my representation yesterday, this is a whole lot of work just to agree with the sale price, but it's just how it's set up. So in the case of what Ms. Prindiville brought up, it's sold higher. I can't just change it. But I can change it during a reval, and I can change it if they come in and appeal.
And an individual property owner requests the evaluation of the property.
So how we handle it in my office is anyone can come in during any time of the year and fill out a request for review. But we save the review and the action on that until open book. So say someone sells or they buy a property in July for less than what it's assessed for, they'll come in and say, hey, I heard the assessed value has to be for the sale price, so you need to change this. Then I'll say, well, fill out this form, provide evidence of value. Evidence is that you bought it for that amount. You have an appraisal, and then we'll put it on file, and then we look at it during the open book process.
Thank you.
Relative to requesting information or asking Mr. Williams for information on particular properties, any of my colleagues have further requests?
I just have a comment. It seems that the homes in my general neighborhood are selling much, much higher than their assessed value. Is that your opinion as well?
Absolutely. In some neighborhoods, I've seen sale prices that are about 25% more than the assessed value.
And I've seen even more than that
Yes.
percentage, so. Okay, that's my comment.
Thank you. So we move to number 14.
And there's Mr. Chair, if I could, under 13, there's A, B, C, and D. We're done with examining the role. I do have a point to bring up under B, correction or correct description or calculation errors. If I could.
Yes, sir.
All right. Jason, under 452-0710-000, it has come to my attention that there was there should be a reduction. So I'm recommending that the board reduce that value or change the value. I'm not sure if the reduction, but change the value to $9,165,500 as a culpable error.
And how do we know this?
I believe this was one of the cases that showed up on Mr. Williams' summary, and it is the Hampton. Is it the Hampton?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the Hampton Inn.
And so if you see number 9 there, the Hampton Inn, it was currently or is an active litigation matter. Jason alluded, Assessor Williams alluded to the fact that this was ongoing and that there was kind of changes imminent. I've been informed by parties involved in that case that this is the new agreed upon correct value.
This is Hampton Inn, correct?
Correct. And so if the board chooses to, and I would make that recommendation, it would be changed to $9,165,500 as a result of a culpable error under 74.331A. I believe it needs to be amended in the actual roll to do so, if they make that amendment, and it would have to be changed both on, well, the property is in there, and then the improvements are on there. And so my recommendation would just be to change, or to make the change to the improvement section.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Could we pause a minute? I believe we're having technical difficulties. I have to, my computer is shutting off, and so
Sure.
the
Absolutely.
live stream is not
Should we
working.
take a brief recess? Would that be appropriate?
That would be helpful.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that, I think, or no? Move to recess?
Yeah, move to recess, yes.
There's a motion to recess, second.
Second.
So in favor?
Aye.
We're in recess. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna check you. I'm gonna check in with.
Just I just want to remind you that while we're in recess, don't discuss any of these matters that are on the agenda, since those are the questions.
The mic's not.
I don't know, I think the mic is probably still live, so act accordingly.
So this is very recent.
Guys, with my name's Andrew Volk. I believe so. I'm gonna go answer the door. I just gotta pray over it. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the technical difficulty?
Apparently it's working, because my computer is just cut off, so I have no way of verifying.
Kale says that it is working and that we are live
Okay,
still.
okay, great. I don't know how to turn it off when we're done. So whenever everyone gets back, I guess, okay. I just had to log in.
So just so we know, even when we're not on YouTube, the mics are still on and broadcasting something on Twitter. So just be
Yeah.
aware. Mr. Volpe here.
Okay.
Of course, the one time I answered the door, there were like 5 people come. No, I can't come in, we just you.
Camera is still broadcasting too, so we're all, it's actually broadcasting.
I'm just saying,
Do you want me to stop it? Because I can stop it and start it again.
I don't mind either way, considering the fact we have to be open for 2 hours, no matter what, we're open and accessible there. I don't mind if it's on and going, since this is part of, people can show up. I don't know if you have a different position on that, I'm not talking.
Fine, he's fine.
Are you up?
Yeah, yeah. We're live, so.
I'm not sure if it was going off.
Does he need to fill out?
You want? Sure.
We're live right now.
So we proceed.
We'll see. All right.
We'll wait for the reason.
Call the meeting back to order. And we're about to look at Attorney Coleman's recommended change.
I'm not gonna pull it out, Jason.
Just to get that in front of us again.
No, that's fine. You can just have a seat there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So where we were at was 13B, and I made the recommendation under the assessment for the parcel number 452-0710-000 to amend that amount at the helpful error to $9,165,500. I don't know if Jason, if you want to pull it up on the roll, since we're in the section of amending or doing the statutory duties with the roll. number again.
No, I got it.
Thank you.
I've been looking at that tax sheet for years.
And since I can't read that, would you give the number one more time, please?
Sure, the value that had been negotiated, similar to that discussion that was had earlier, was for $9,165,500.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept this change?
And again, that'd be a palpable error if the committees choose to do that, under 74.33 sub 1 sub A.
Thank you for that. Is there a motion?
I move that we accept that palpable error.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? It passes. Thank you.
And then just for clarification, Jason, on this, Assessor William, I gotta stop doing that, sorry. On this, on the roll here, is it divvied up by actual property and then improvements?
Yeah, so you'll see here the 783,700, that's the land value. These are the improvement values and then the total value. So the value that was given to you, the 9,165,500, that's the total value.
Okay. And so my recommendation was for that, the change not to be taken out of the land value, but to be taken out of the improvements. Is that acceptable to the board? Is that what the motion was intended to do? Yes. Thank you.
Your recommendation, yes. And since I'm not following that, because I'm not hearing very well.
Sorry.
Did you say, should this be another motion?
No, I was ensuring and making sure we had a record that was, how that change was to be applied was consistent with the motion that was made. I believe that was the consensus that I heard, that was the motion. Is that okay, would everybody be in agreement with that?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Sewell. We then move on to certify all corrections of error under state law. We made a change. We approve that. Do we just take a motion to, are there other corrections?
I don't believe there's any other items to address under C or D unless the board is aware of something else.
Does the board have any insights, any thoughts about other corrections? And was there, relative to the elimination of double assessed properties, Mr. Williams, was there anything in that regard?
No, not that I'm aware of for this assessment cycle.
Therefore, it appears that we have performed our statutory duties. Certify all corrections of errors under state law, Wisconsin statute 70.43. Take a motion.
Yes.
Is there a motion to certify?
I move that we certify all corrections of error under state law, statute 70.43 as discussed.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? That passes. We move on to 15. Verify with the assessor that open book changes have been included in the assessment roll. Mr. Williams?
Yes, Mr. Chair, as I previously reported under the annual assessment report, we had 33 open book cases. Of those, 10 values were changed, and those are recorded on the roll that's being presented today.
Thank you. Do we, at this time, Madam Counselor, do we have a motion on that? There's nothing to have a motion for, is
There's
there?
no need to have a motion.
Thank you. Next is allow taxpayer to examine assessment data, and under this format, how is that done? Electronically? electronically?
Electronically, so the assessment roll's been available to the public since May 22nd. It's available here for anyone that is in person that would like to view it.
So a citizen, a resident, a property owner could walk in today, correct?
Correct.
And, all right. So,
But as Mr. Williams said, it's accessible online. I would recommend perhaps there is one person present. We could also put a general request out here that if anybody wishes to examine anything in particular, they make that request known now. If there isn't any requests, we can move on to the next item.
do you have, sir, you have a request to examine the roll? Are you interested in examining the roll?
No.
Okay, thank you. There are no requests to examine the data, the roll rather. So we'll move on. If anyone, Mr. Williams, if anyone, if a property owner has filed a request or made a request, would that have come to you?
Yes, it comes to the assessor's office. It's processed, it's scanned in, it's attached to the property record card, and then it's, I'm notified and for its review.
And you have no record of that occurring?
Or,
Coming into wanting to look at the.
oh, to look at the roll, I was answering, I gave you an answer to a different question. We've had people calling the office and emailing us for the past month asking about values, and we've directed them to the website.
Okay.
We haven't had anyone ask to see a hard copy of the roll.
All right, thank you. Again, an opportunity under number 16 of our agenda will allow taxpayers to examine assessment data. Sir, are you here to look at assessment data? No. Thank you. Then we have 17, consideration of in a whole series A through H. Waivers, do we have any waivers of required 48-hour notice of intent to file?
Yeah, there's one person here right now.
I'm sorry.
There's a person here right now.
All right.
Yes.
Sir, so I could better manage this meeting, would you give me your name, please?
Andrew Volk, ULK.
Andrew, you said? And why are you here?
To arbitrate the assessed value on purchase of a home on 1475 South 91st Street.
1475 South
91st.
95th.
91st, first.
And one more time, would you spell your last name?
VOLK, like Volkswagen.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf.
While Mr. Volk completes his request for the waiver, we clarify with the assessor that there's no other waiver of the 48-hour notice. That's what I recommend the next step be.
Thank you. Are there other requests, Mr. Williams?
Not at this time,
Thank you.
unless the city clerk has received an email or phone call.
I have nothing in my email since we started the meeting.
While Mr. Volk completes his paperwork, we can come back to the day and move on to the
Waivers or requests for waiver or review hearing allowing the property to appeal directly to the circuit court. Do we have any such requests?
The city does, or the assessor does in this case, Mr. Chair. I have a few I could go through, so it depends on how you'd like to do that. If you want to hear Mr. Volk first, or if you want me to address each kind of in an order that I've organized them.
Yes, please.
Okay. One of the objections is for the Aurora Hospital at XT number 4879001-000. I can go in order, whatever you have, Jason.
Well, so
Okay. All right, let's join ones first. All right.
okay, so first one. I have.
I'm going to take back that first request, and I'll get to that one in a moment. Assessor Williams has indicated to me that there are some that are joint requests, both the city assessor and the objector are requesting. One such would be Felker. That is on the screen right now. Parcel number 414-990-001. My understanding, and if Jason wants, or Assessor Williams wants to chime in on this one, but this is one that had been or was currently being litigated in circuit court.
Yeah, this is Culver's. This is an active case from the previous year. We're appealing 2020, and typically in situations like this, you would just combine the cases so that you have 19 and 20 together.
And for clarification, you wouldn't join those cases. It is an option that the circuit court would have on a motion by 8 parties to join those together. But my position or my request would be to waive that, along with Felker's request would be to waive that to circuit court based on the complexity of the issues that will be presented, the fact that we're already in circuit court on these matters, and the time needed for the board and further objectors would be overly burdensome to hear this request in this format or form.
Prior to last year, we wanted a record. It was a need to have a record at this level. But last year, we took the advice of council and followed the procedure you just outlined. And that apparently is working.
As in, I'm not here to advise the board, and so I'm representing the assessor in this case. In my opinion, as the attorney for the assessor, yes, I think that is the appropriate response in this case, especially for those overly complex ones, those that are going to be a kind of a novel issue, and we can get into those. I have about 10 requests, I think.
Attorney Hammock, do you agree?
I agree that there are actually, if you refer back to Mr. Williams' letter in summary, I believe what he's getting to is a joint request for all of those currently under litigation to be automatically essentially waived to circuit court. I would think that is advisable given that there is ongoing litigation that the board not essentially interject into that ongoing litigation and that those matters be wrapped up into one essentially circuit court case. That would be the most efficient and expeditious way to handle those matters.
Thank you.
will you be adding any more other than Culver's
Yes,
to your list?
yes.
Can we do this all as one?
Yes, so if the board wants to refer to page 2 of the assessor's list, those, I think what that will help us simplify some of the ones that we can kind of take care of first in terms of waiver.
I'm not sure all those are joint requests, are they?
Yeah, so just to clarify, in this case, the objector is requesting a waiver to circuit court. And so what we could do is go through and name each one.
Yes.
And then after that,
So I'll be making my motion for each one of those that we're in agreement in terms of the objector and the assessor are in agreement. And then I think you can have a block vote on those, and then I'll go through a list that either the objector has been silent on, or maybe they would object to waiver, I'm not sure, but that's the position I would take at this point. So the next one will be Hillside, which is 449996005. Again, as alluded to before, this one is currently in litigation, previously in circuit court. It is a joint, effectively a joint request by the assessor and the objector. It would be my position that this is another complex case, especially due to the fact that it's in litigation. It could double up on issues that will be addressed or negotiated, or could be negotiated in that circuit court litigation matter. This would be one that I'm requesting would be waived to circuit court. You want me to keep going then?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Jason's right.
I think that's it.
Okay.
So now the rest is ours.
I believe those are the only two, and then I have other requests after this point for waivers that the objector has either.
So we should have a motion to approve the two that you've identified.
Yes, if that's how you choose to proceed.
Is there a motion to proceed?
What were the two that we're talking about?
Aurora is one.
I'm sorry, no, I took back Aurora for the time being. It was Spelker and Hillside. Spelker is Colders and Hillside.
Holders and Hillside, which are number 1 and number 3 on that list, the summary.
How does Aurora fit in, if you have it here?
Aurora will be a motion I make it just after this as one that we're objecting to, or that I'm requesting waiver. I'm sorry, to circuit court.
So it's Colders and Hillside is a motion.
I move that we waive Culver's and Hillside onto the waive before hearing for those two, based on the fact that they're somewhat complicated and there's court action involved.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
And then, Mr. Chair, if I could, I do have other motions. Attorney Williams, Assessor Williams, do you have a position on which order these should go in? Okay. So I've had these next two categorized together in a method. I can do that. Thank you. I have the next two organized together kind of by how the property is being used. There are several auto dealers that are objecting at this point. My opinion of those would be that they're a unique property in that how they are used and how they're utilized, how they are improved. In discussions with the assessor, based on that unique property, it's going to be a very complex, or it would be a very complex proceeding. And based on the amount that we have here appealing those, it's going to take substantial time to go through those individual objections. So I'm recommending additionally, Wild, I believe, is also in circuit court already. And I think that's the only one that's already in circuit court. So I'm making the motion to waive the following properties or the following objections in the circuit court. Wild Toyota has 4 parcels. I can go through each one of those if the board would request. I'm also requesting Infinity under 485-9990-006 be waived. Based on, again, that complex nature of the property, the burden that it would place on not only this board, but also other objectors, the time allocated to that. We don't really burdensome. I'm requesting 485-990-007, the former Met Auto, for those same reasons. 523-9986-010, Boucher. And 485-0054-005, the Audi dealership. Again, all of those being for the reason they are unique properties, present unique issues that will be litigated or should be litigated. There's going to be a need for additional, in all likelihood, discussion, negotiation, and potential discovery. And I would request all of those be waived.
We have a motion that's been presented by Attorney Serwin. Is there a second?
I have a question. For the attorney.
Yes.
Have we met all of the requirements on the properties he's recommending to fit this waiver policy?
So the waiver policy states for, waiver policy is if somebody requests. So the first two parts of the statutory requirement, the notice of intent to appear and an objection form have been filed. I would require the assessor, assuming since the assessor is making this recommendation, those two things have been applied with.
On all of the ones that have been discussed, yes.
Okay. So then the second thing is the criteria that are listed on page 2. I believe Mr. Coley did a good job when he made the motion for the first two and stating how waiving Felker and Hillside met those criteria. So in this case, the next step for the board would be to apply that to this case of objections and make a decision that the board either agrees or disagrees that these particular matters, and you can go case by case if you want to, or you can accept that, yes, these are auto dealers and they have a unique set of circumstances and we're going to treat them the same. And based on these considerations listed in criterion number 2, we believe that waiver is appropriate. That's essentially the next step, is to make that determination, and then I'll agree and have a discussion on that.
Okay, as long as we have the timely notice of intent to appear and the objection form, I would approve the recommendation made by the attorney.
As a second?
So just for clarification and just make sure the record's clear, I'm requesting it. I might have used the wrong language and I apologize. So I'm requesting this waiver. You need the board to have a motion and then a second. So my motion I'm not a member of the board. I can't motion it.
All right, let's back up, start over. We need a motion. And I think this Bill was given a motion, correct?
Yes.
And do we have a second?
Can we have just a little bit more discussion, please?
Sure.
Make
We
sure
have a motion and a second, and
recommendation.
I'll move into discussion.
Okay, from what I've heard, I think we should probably agree that the automobile dealers in West Dallas are a unique bunch of property owners and should be considered perhaps separately than what else has been going on, particularly considering the fact that there's going to be some litigation in all probability regarding those things anyhow. So the first thing I would think about would be, let's agree that the automobile dealers will handle as a group, and then secondly, that we'll waive a whole bunch of them on the order. So I would move that we give some consideration to the automobile dealers that are located in West Dallas as a unique group that has a number of specific problems unique to themselves, and therefore we will consider them as a group. That's my motion.
We have a motion and a second before us. Now we have another motion, so we have to back up and take care of the first motion.
Okay.
The first motion was put forth by Sharon and got a second to that to move all these cases forward for the reasons put forth. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, for clarity, if I may, by move forward, you mean waive or move forward to a hearing in front of court of review?
That they be moved forward to the courts?
To circuit court, waive to circuit court.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now,
So adopting your recommendation to move to circuit court.
Understood, thank you.
Those in favor? I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were gonna say something?
what is the motion then? At the moment, we're voting on a motion. Who made the motion?
Our colleague Sharon made the motion.
Which was to
You say the motion?
Who we waive these matters into.
Take all these auto dealerships as a group
all right,
and move them on to the court.
okay, great, I understand. Ready for a vote?
I'm ready for a vote. Those in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? That passes. And you were advancing a motion of a similar sort.
Well, yeah, it's kind of big now, we already passed a lot.
I thought that was the case. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a few more to discuss. There are two properties that I would put together. One being the Home Depot, which actually has two parcel numbers, 520-9965-035 and 520-9965-032, as well as the Target 485-990-15. I think it's actually 015. So I put these two together. They are separate objectors, separate requests, but based on the nature of these requests, this is kind of that argument that's been going around about the dark store theory, which has been litigated largely. I believe that these should also be waived, and making the request to waive these to circuit court, both establishments. It's going to be a complex argument made to this board. The waiving it on the circuit court would allow city staff additional time to obtain information both from the stores or the objectors, as well as have continued discussion with those objectors. And the timeline is more appropriate for circuit court versus to have a hearing in front of the board of review with these complex issues and delay other potential objectors' hearings. So under the criteria that this board has adopted, I would request to waive both of those, the Home Depot and the Target.
And Assessor, you do have the notice and the objection form?
For Home Depot, yes. For Target, the last that I checked, we just had the intent. Unless anything's come in to the city clerk.
Only thing that came in this morning were for different properties. And those are the ones you're looking at.
Yeah. So it looks like we just have an intent for Target.
And then Target, I believe the appropriate response would be that they haven't filed their appropriate paperwork to receive a hearing in front of the board review. And so that by operation of law, no hearing be scheduled. They can proceed if they see fit. And for Target, for Home Depot, then waive that. I would request that the board waive that to the circuit court.
You're requesting that Home Depot could be moved to the circuit court.
Yeah.
But Target, hold on that.
They could still bring information in today or send it in yet. I think they have a very short amount of time to do that. But that I may review Target's request for a waiver at a later point. If they don't get their request in for a hearing, I don't think the board would schedule a hearing or have anything to waive.
So
if I may, Mr.
at this moment, we should have a motion on Home Depot.
I believe so.
That's correct.
Yeah, so coming up, Mr. Chair, if I may, agenda item 18 is review notices of intent to file objection. So we could come back to Target under that, along with, there's a few others that fall under that category.
So you're correct, Mr. Chair, that Home Depot would be the only one at this point that is right to have a discussion on or a motion on. Target may come up again.
So is there a motion to, because of the complexity of the Home Depot case, to move that to the circuit court?
I saw.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, that passes. Thank you.
And then I'm just checking my list to see, I think I have one more. Yeah. Okay.
Do we want to hear Mr. Volk's, objection?
I have one more, or whatever the committee or the board wants to do.
We're just about finished here with one more to go.
Okay.
My last
Was
one,
that the Aurora?
correct, the last one was the Aurora 487-9001-000, Aurora Hospital. I'm requesting that this be waived to circuit court. Hospitals present a highly unique assessment. In discussion with Assessor Williams, that is especially the case here. And based on that, it would be a complex hearing that would take a lot of time. I think it's important to point out that waiving the circuit court would allow city staff and the objector both have longer discussions and potentially work something out or have additional discovery that can be done. So I'm requesting that the Aurora Hospital also be waived to circuit court.
Have you received the timely notice of intent to file?
Yes, on the Aurora, yes.
And have you received the objection form?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
And then we adopt City Attorney Sermon's recommendation to move the Aurora case to circuit court. Waive the case to circuit court.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Yes, Sharon.
Is this okay with you? Is this your recommendation as well, that all the documents have been filed?
If the assessor certifies that they've been filed, yes. If the board of review is finding that it is complex and would be better heard by the circuit court, yes.
There is a second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That passes. Thank you. And now, are we finished with that area?
With requests from the assessor for waivers, yes, I believe the committee wanted to go back up to 17A.
Yes. And Mr. Moulton. Is this a hearing?
So he is requesting a waiver of the required 48-hour notice of intent.
Is there,
He had some
Desires.
needs some forms. Having court to maybe get copies of these out.
as we proceed, council, will Mr. Bolt be sworn?
Yes.
At this stage, we're not hearing a hearing testimony. It's a request to waive to get a hearing because something was not met. So I'm not sure. I guess I'll defer to Attorney Hammond for this one. I don't know if we're going to be taking testimony at this point. If you want to, I suppose you could, because it's going to give a recitation of why an application was late. And so if you want testimony tonight, I suppose you could.
It's not required.
All right, thank you.
So at this time, the clerk is making copies of the forms he submitted because he did not file the notice of intent timely. So he has completed paperwork explaining why. She's making copies of that for you to review. You can also speak with him directly
Sure.
and ask him about that. If you want that to be sworn, as so his explanation, we could, but I don't believe it's required.
All right, thank you.
just while we're waiting, I'll refer the board to the policy we adopted earlier. For the criteria that you adopted to consider when considering whether or not to grant a request of this sort.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's pretty cut. Almost 12, so, great.
Here, I can do these next 2 days.
Well, they're.
We have before us Mr. Volk's statements for his good cause waiver request and extraordinary circumstances waiver request. Essentially one and the same in terms of the answer, the reply, the information. Would you, Mr. Wolf, just highlight, highlight the issue at hand for you? You couldn't get to the library computer, you couldn't get here, doors locked, and you apparently have tried to do that.
Right. I guess because of the pandemic, made things harder. I was able to talk to Sherry in early May, and I had requested some paperwork be sent to the house. I hadn't received it, and I think it was early in the week, I think it was Tuesday morning, I was able to get a hold of her, because she had given me in May, early May, a phone number. I guess she was working out of the house. So I had called her, and she said she requested that I instantly fill out the paperwork at the library and get it in yesterday. And that I would have a potential to come to the board and explain why I wasn't able to get the material. The city hall was closed and I couldn't get access to any documents, nor could I get any help with personnel telling me what to fill out. I don't have internet access at home.
Thank you. Given the matter it's put forth before us, and as the attorney has indicated, we should be looking at the procedures that we have reaffirmed this morning and use that as the determinant, I would believe. The time is notice of intent to appear, time of objection. There was not a timely notice, but.
So we can consult some of the same criteria, that's my apologies. So we did not adopt an exact policy for this circumstance, but the same criteria that we have under 2 for the policies that we did adopt regarding fairness, the stated reasons, the ability and availability of the person objecting today. I think those are all considerations that can go into effect in the board's decision whether to allow Mr. Volk to proceed despite the fact that he did not follow the timeliness requirements To that end, I will also add that, since he is here today, he is present today, those documents could be provided to him today, and the board could even hear the matter today, if that influences the board's decision in waiving or not waiving in any form. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that.
Attorney Hammond, question for you though. On the agenda, where would a hearing take place? This is an open meeting, and so I'm concerned if we proceed to a hearing today that it hasn't been appropriately noticed.
Okay.
And so I guess that's my concern. I just don't see an agenda item or a line item to allow for hearings today.
All right. Well, we could at least give him the paperwork so that the assessor has notice of the intent of the grounds for the objections, and we can schedule a hearing that is properly noticed.
It certainly strikes me that Mr. Volk has made an effort. He's here, and I think in the area of fairness, it's only fair to graduate this request. But welcome hearing from my colleagues.
I think we have to give some consideration for the fact that the whole process has been complicated and the coronavirus business places shut down. It's more difficult to get communication done in a timely manner. It seems to me that Mr. Rowe has made some, at least has been trying it in the appropriate amount of time to get this done. And has been frustrated by some of those things that we just mentioned. And in terms of fairness, I would be inclined to accept his waiver.
I would agree with that.
And certainly add these are unprecedented times. It's very low. Look back at the comparison. Even my limited time on the board, so I would accept this.
I move that we have good cause to accept Mr. Wolf's request.
Do you have a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second to accept this request. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, Mr. Wolf. Thank you for your appearance in your case, and look forward to seeing you at a later date.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, yes. Just to clarify, he does need to file that so that we can, while you're here, get the paperwork and file that today so that we can get a hearing scheduled.
That is the objection form that we need correct today. Okay.
Did you get that on the computer at all from Sherry?
What would be the best way, Mr. Williams, of him getting that?
Yeah, I can print it. Okay, do you have one, Rebecca? that
I
can-
can, if you just want to wait here, I'll get you a copy, right?
The next item on our agenda is request to set up to testify by telephone or submit sworn statements. Do we have any?
I'm not aware of any.
No,
Thank you. Next is objection forms and hearings for property owners who did not submit acceptable income and expense information pursuant to Wisconsin statute 70.477 AF. Are there any?
Yes, there are, Mr. Chair. If I could speak to, I believe there's three specifically. First, do you care, Assessor Williams, do you care what order I go in?
What do we do? Beecham Park?
Sure. There are two properties that are very similar. I'll start with Beecher Apartments, 477-0120-000. When the assessor uses the income approach at assessment, the objector would have to file income or appropriate income information no later than 7 days before the first meeting. For Beecher Apartments, I don't believe anything was filed related to the income or expense approach. And so by operation of law, it says no hearing shall be held for those individuals. And so that's the case on Beecher Apartments. I request that no hearing be scheduled. And then on 517-0184-0000 Parthenon Foods, the exact same situation. No income expense information was provided. The assessor used the income approach method for assessment, and so accordingly, no person may appear and no hearing should be scheduled by operation of law. Would be my request for both of those. I have one more that's slightly different.
What was the name of the last?
Parthenon Foods and Beecher Apartments.
What kind of, what foods?
Parthenon?
Oh, Parthenon.
Yes. And then do you want me to wait on the third one, or it's slightly different, although I'm gonna have similar arguments?
Well, let's take the first two, and they're in the same category, same situation, and make a decision relative to those two. And then we'll take on the third one. We need a motion for this,
Yes.
and the motion would be,
That they are, so statute 44.7 AF states no person may appear before the board of review, testify to the board by telephone, or object to evaluation if they have not provided the required information within 7 days. So the motion would be that they are not allowed to object and that they are not entitled to a hearing.
thank you. And is there a motion?
I move that Beecher Apartments and Parthenon Foods not be allowed to proceed with an objection form based on the fact that they have not cooperated with the requirements, providing information required.
A second?
Second.
We have a motion, second discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask the assessor, are there any mitigating circumstances? Have you spoken with either of these entities?
So February 18th, we sent out the income and expense surveys to all income producing properties in the city, and that was their opportunity to provide that information. We received many back. It wasn't 100% return rate, but we did receive many back. So it's February that we asked for the information, and then the deadline to provide that was June 3rd. So they had March, April, May, June, 4 months to get that information in.
Mr. Chair, if I could as well. I know that the clerk's office had sent out emails to these two entities as well yesterday saying they were deficient in what they provided. And this is a different type of review than the 48-hour missed 48-hour deadline. That's good cause. There is no real analysis on these because they did not provide any information. So that it's not like good cause or extraordinary cause. There was just, if you didn't give it, you don't get it here. Would be my position.
The deadline was June 3rd for the record.
Correct.
So we have a motion, correct? I think we do.
There's a motion in a second.
One second. And we're into discussion. Any further discussion? I'll call the motion. Those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. We'll move on to the third item.
Thank you. The third item was, let me get down to it one moment. Identified, at least to me, as warehouse 481-9993-032. In this circumstance, the tax representative provided some information to the city. This is the information that was provided to us, a Word document of unknown origin, I guess I could say. Under 70.47 sub 7 sub AF, it requires no person may appear before the board to review, testify to the board by telephone, or object to evaluation if that evaluation was made by the assessor or the objector using the income method, unless no later than 7 days before the first meeting of the board of review, the person supplies to the assessor all of the information about income and expense as specified in the manual under 73.03 sub 2A that the assessor requests. And so my request at this point would not be to be not schedule a hearing because the tax representative did not provide sufficient income and expense information as provided or specified in the manual. My issue with this is that there's no veracity to the document. It is a Word document. Oftentimes, and Assessor Williams, please address me or correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there's forms from the DOR and the city that we request that they fill out and send back to us. There are circumstances, if I'm not wrong, where an entity would send us their large section of their books, essentially, large swaths of information to account for their income or expense. It's generally on letterhead, it's accountable to that business. Alternatively, here we have the tax representative submitting a Word document. Based on the requirements of the statute, the city assessor and the city attorney representing the city assessor's position in this case would be that this is insufficient. There's no veracity, it's just a document to get his foot in the door and try to have a hearing. Could put any numbers on here, we have no idea. And so based on that, I would ask that by operation of law, no hearing be scheduled for that entity or that property. I don't have anything to add.
So the motion would be to deny because of the lack of the timeliness issue as well as the lack of veracity of the information.
For clarity, this one was on time, is my understanding. This was provided within that 7 days.
So again, you know, with the other ones, the income and expense survey request was sent February 18th. Ownership did not provide that. Then earlier,
The veracity of the information.
Sufficient. So the AF requires that the information provided meet the requirements of the assessment manual. This does not meet those requirements. That's my understanding.
correct.
Okay.
Is there a form, a specific form then for that?
Yes, so we provide a
Did you send
form.
that form to the property owner?
Yes, we did.
Okay,
And they did not send it back.
okay.
I'd also point out to the court or to the board that in the annotations under Wisconsin statute section 70.47, there's a case called Bitters v. Newbold, which says a board of review may deny a taxpayer a hearing if the taxpayer's objections are not stated on the approved form. The board is not required to accept information submitted in a different form. Certiorari review under this section is limited to the action of the board. Now that's specific, and I don't want to mislead the board. The way that reads is the objection form. I guess my argument is that this is not dissimilar. We send out forms as a Department of Revenue form. Instead, what they send us is a Word document that is insufficient.
So if I may, Mr. Chair. So what happened is the property owner did not submit this. And then at some point in this process, the owner hired a tax representative to come in and try to get the value lowered. And initially, this is what was provided here at the bottom. Just rent, they listed 0 rent, 0 common area maintenance expenses, 0 revenue, and nothing but expenses. And it's on a blank, there's not even the letterhead of the tax rep. It's just this piece of paper with no identifying source of data. So I asked for that. I gave him a chance to resubmit this information, and what was provided was this document. Really not much more information. Again, it's not on anyone's letterhead. It doesn't even identify who wrote this, who provided it, what the data is coming from. So this came up quite a bit last year during last year's board review. This is a tactic. You put it on a piece of paper and you pass it off as something that's true. But what are the other objectors? What have they done? Well, I can tell you that there's other objectors that have provided their IRS documents. They have had accounting records with signed affidavits from their CPAs. We've had other objectors provide information on our form. We've had other people provide construction data signed off by architects and engineers. So there are there are a lot of ways to get us this information that gives us a sense of that we're looking at some real numbers. There's no way to verify if this is true or not.
We have a motion to reject this request.
Have they filed an objection request? And therefore, who that objection request be asking for a hearing before this board?
This one filed an objection. Let me get to it
Our
here.
motion then would be to reject their motion
I would have to defer.
or request, or their objection and request. The logical extension of their filing the form would be that they would be given a hearing before this board. So it would be denying them a hearing date or not accepting their objection.
That would be the motion is to deny them the hearing because they did not meet the statutory requirements of providing the appropriate information.
Do we have that motion in place, so we need to make it?
I think it's in place. Does everyone understand the motion? Is there a second?
Second.
You had to make that motion.
I did.
As a board member, so we need a second from someone else.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second discussion. There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. That passes. Thank you. And are there any subpoena requests?
I'm not aware of any subpoena requests.
None?
I'm not aware of any, no.
Thank you. Next is action on any other legally allowed required order review matters.
I believe I have a request there as well. Let me pull up my documents here. If I could just have 1 minute to organize what we've done thus far. So Assessor Williams, please correct me if I'm wrong. There are some entities that had filed late and had not appeared or submitted any requests at this point in time.
So we have one item, which is the JJK Legacy Group. They filed an objection, but they didn't put a value. I believe, and they're not here to correct me or clarify, I'm just guessing. I think they put the tax bill amount. But if you look at law, it says that you have to appeal a value and provide a value. So that's the issue with that one. And then there's 4 properties where they filed an intent to object, but as of right now, I have not received the objection. So it's after 12, so the 2 hours have passed.
So is action required on one item?
I believe on JJK, because the statutory requirement requires them to have a value put in, that would be a motion, at least my request would be to deny a hearing because they have incorrectly filled out the request. The assessor does not have any grounds to go on at this point or to understand, and we're not here to update that information presently. We deny a hearing for JJK Legacy Group.
That was JJK, like,
JJK Legacy Group, 479-9999-003.
Right? Yes, ma'am.
The law requires notice essentially of what they're contesting and what their asserted value is. Essentially, the board is not provided that in this case. So the request that's on the table is to deny a hearing based on that.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Why aren't they here? If they think they completed it correctly, shouldn't they be here?
That is on our issue, is it?
No, they've been given notice that this meeting is taking place. They have been given notice of what's required on the form because they were provided this form. They simply did not complete it correctly. And I know historically that the assessor's office is usually accessible to answer those questions, and I'm not sure, but was any communications made to them?
I've seen a few communications between the subjector and the city with trying to get this stuff filled out, so.
So you talked to them about that, not gotten responses to what their evaluation is?
I have not done that. So it looks like my staff just provided the form. Yeah.
Is there a motion to deny?
I move that we deny JJK as a hearing based on the fact that they did not properly fill out one of the objection forms. So if we don't accept the objection form because it hasn't filled out properly, there's no objection before us.
Correct.
I second the motion.
We have a motion, second, discussion. There being none, those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Thank you. We've already had a palpable error issue, correct?
I'm sorry.
The palpable error is the next item here, so we had one of those, dealt with it.
Correct.
So there's nothing else in that category under G.
Correct.
Were there any more junior acts that the assessor's office were lead to deny hearings?
No, I don't believe so. There were only a few, about 4 of them that haven't gotten in a actual objection. They provided a notice of objection, but they didn't provide an objection. So I think that is addressed when we schedule hearings. They're under 18. Yeah, under 18 and or 19. So we wouldn't be scheduling hearings on those. There's nothing to schedule because they didn't appeal or they didn't object to their.
So then we go to 17H, omitted property pursuant to 7.44.
Just for point of clarification and to clarify the record, on 17G then, there was, as you had illuminated, there was that helpful error that was corrected. And just to highlight it here, that correction was made and there are no other ones that I'm aware of at this point, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's my understanding. Thank you.
So H then, thank you.
Any omitted properties, Mr. Williams?
No, Mr. Chair.
That completes item 17. Item number 18, review notice of the intent to file objections. Are there any notices?
Like we did have some of these scheduled.
Well, Mr. Wolf is there. Luna and Target. They have filed objections.
only one I believe that we have to schedule is Mr. Gold. The other four did not actually send in any objections. Has the clerk received any objections in this time?
No.
I don't believe they're here in person. No one's come in. So the only one to schedule is Mr. Gold. My understanding is that the former Burger King and Luna Properties are both the fourth one.
Target
Target.
or
Have
date.
not filed objections, so if they have filed objections, there's nothing to schedule for those.
So we're going to now, are we looking at a calendar for scheduling?
Yes.
What are the dates? Ms. Grill, I think you put out, or Jason had put out one of, maybe both of them, some dates in July, I think. So possible time frame for hearings.
We're looking at June 17th through the 19th.
Okay, I'll be back up here soon.
Yeah.
17th.
I think so.
So, June 17th, 18th, and 19th, is that what put forth?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So earlier, when I was addressing the board, I mentioned the difference between tier one analysis of the sale and then versus cherry picking. This is the case. And given the operation that we've set up here, and given the fact that I agree with the property owner, I don't think there's going to be much to this hearing. And so I wonder if your council or mine can find a way to do the hearing now. Because my recommendation would be to agree with the property owner on the value of the most recent sale. I would just hate to have to mobilize all of this.
Well, counselors, we need your guidance because, as was sort of pointed out earlier, there is no agenda item. And Mr. Williams, I think you raised a great point. To figure out a way to solve this if possible. And I would welcome input from both counselors.
Yeah, it's good. For some reason it turned off, but I got it back on.
Oh, okay. I'm, give me a moment to think if there's a way.
We
Is there,
agree to the waiver. Is the objection form completed in its entirety?
Looks like he's still writing. But he's indicated the value that he's wanted on
is acceptable to you?
yes. But I guess we'd have to see what he's writing on it first.
I think the bigger picture here is as a public board, can we take up any items that are not on the agenda? It's a matter of record. I would ask Rebecca about that.
The issue that we're going to run into is that these board meetings, these decisions are open meetings, and it's a decision that the public has not had notice of is going to be made. That's the issue we're running into. The public has not been noticed of the fact that this decision will be made today. And I don't know that there's any way to circumvent that in any form of fashion.
I recall, I believe it was 2016, where there's a board hearing scheduled for later that day.
The notice requirements, and this would be a question for the clerk at this point, is okay, the notice has changed, but 48 hours is the requirement, is that?
For the board of review notices.
Okay. But both individuals, both the assessor and the property owner can waive that 48-hour notice requirement, right? Yes, I know that's true. Sorry, I need that. That can be waived by both parties if they want to have a hearing and not have 48-hour notice beforehand. I understand. So the only issue then becomes if Mr. Volk wants a hearing today, where, if it would fit into the agenda, where would that fit in?
Could it maybe fit into probable error, at least a probable error?
No.
That's a definition by law. When I'm looking at the agenda, I'm wondering if under sub 17 sub F, action of any other legally allowed or required board of review matters, a hearing is a legally allowed matter, a required board of review matter, or alternatively under 19, consideration of proposed schedule of hearing on objections, is that we are considering the schedule and we'd like to schedule it now. I'm checking on it right now if there's any other way through. Maybe it'd be appropriate to have a recess, like the attorneys can knock through this and see if there's a way to get it happening right now, if the board wants to.
Is there a motion for a recess?
I move recess in order to determine,
Second,
Second.
those in favor, we're in recess, thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to find an answer ASAP.
push it through.
Could we simply conclude this hearing and then as a part of this hearing, schedule that meeting for 1 month?
I shall other places.
You don't have no reason to force.
Everything down here. And he can't speak again.
Acceptable.
It's just what we talk about there. They give me comments stuff like, I'm a pretty good. Good job. So,
I waive it if she wants to waive it.
right, so I think we can waive it, have it, I'm pretty confident both can waive it for your notice before hearing. So we can do it today if you want to. Just wondering where we fit it in. Time out. We're on, so, use that. Top one.
No.
We have a quorum, but
You have a forum, Mr.
But
Conrad.
just for the record, Mr. Randy Casson had to leave, so we now have 4 board members, but still a quorum. Yes, sir.
as the assessor's attorney, I believe we can have a hearing today. So statutorily, it's an option the committee, the board does have discretion to have hearings, even day of. And so you have the authority to do it today. And so since this is a board review meeting, when you would have the authority to have that meeting, it would be my motion that it is properly noticed at this point that we can proceed. If we do proceed to a hearing today for Mr. Volk, both, I guess I would ask that we put on the record that both the assessor through me and Mr. Volk do not object to a 48-hour. You're supposed to get 48 hours in advance notice of a hearing. If he wants to have it today, we can certainly do that today for him. But he would have to waive that requirement on the record. We could have the hearing and then finish up with the remainder of the agenda at that point.
All right.
I don't know if Rebecca Hammack has any other input, but that'd be my position.
Your position is to schedule a hearing, not,
No, we can do it right now.
okay,
Do it right now, immediately.
so, as Attorney Serwin mentioned, the assessor and the objector are both entitled to 48 hours notice to have time to prepare for the hearing. If both parties are willing to waive that 48-hour notice, I believe we can proceed with the hearing now.
Mr. Volk, would you come up to the table, please? Are you willing, prepared to waive the 48-hour notice? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Williams, are you prepared to waive the 48-hour notice?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am.
Okay, for the record, both parties have waived 48-hour notice. We have a formally forced objection to real property assessment.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We have this form in front of us, the real property assessment. I believe you had said earlier, Mr. Williams, that you and Mr. Volk agreed on the value.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will need to swear in anyone that's going to testify for the hearing.
All right, please do.
Would all persons, including the assessor, intending to provide testimony for this hearing, please raise your right hand to be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony which you shall give in the matter now on hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Grill.
And Mr. Chair, then I guess procedurally what I would ask is that the objector would generally go first, present whatever information he or she thinks would be appropriate for the board to consider. And then it would be the assessor's option or opportunity at that point to protect or defend the assessment. If an assessor does not defend the assessment, if the assessor does not present a case, there's case law on point that the board would be basically obligated to follow the only appropriate information they're provided. And so once it comes time for the assessor to present information, I will have a brief discussion with him and we will decide how to proceed at that point, if that's okay.
Is it possible to bring up this property on the screen so that we have the assessed value that we're starting with?
Thank you.
So it's right here.
So as Attorney Serwin was discussing, this number of $175,300 is the presumed correct number. However, Mr. Volk can now provide testimony as to why he believes it's a different number. And then next we can hear from the assessor on his position, and then the board would make their decision.
Thank you. Mr. Volk, would you make your presentation as to your number, supporting your number?
Sure. Basically, in October 11th of 2019, the house was listed for 129.9. I had made an offer to purchase on that day. The offer to purchase was $164,500 with a $500 one-year warranty for a total of $165,000. The next offer to purchase was $155,000, I believe. So I'm asking the board to take consideration in making the assessment purchase price.
At 165?
164.5.
164.5. All right. Counselor, Mr. Williams?
Sorry, I believe.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I have a question.
I missed it.
You purchased this property for $164,500, and you said the asking price is $129,900.
Correct.
Why would you do that? Why would you offer $34,000 more than the asking price?
That particular house had never been placed on the market since the original purchaser had built the home. So it had been in the family since 1935.
That would be the Ajax family.
Yeah, that's the Ajax family.
Okay,
Counselor or Mr. Williams?
My advice to Mr. Williams at this point, based on our discussions my advice to the assessor at this point, that based on our discussions, he not present a case based on some requirements that he can't impeach himself for the role at this point. And so I have him avoid doing that. And I think by case law, this board is then obligated to follow Mr. Volk's request, since no evidence was presented.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the $164,000?
I move that we accept the 164.
Yeah, 164.5, is it?
164.5. I move that we accept his judgment regarding that the dollar amount of 164.5.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We'll move on back to our agenda. I'll try to find my agenda somewhere.
Thank you, Jason.
I think I think we should still move through the line items and just make sure that they're been addressed, but I don't think there's much substantively to do at this point.
There's nothing else, correct?
Correct.
So to 19, there's nothing else to schedule. This is the only hearing that actually objected, and we waived this in based on the good cause. So there's nothing else to schedule, I would agree. I don't think there's anybody else in person under subsection for sub 20. Opportunity for objectors who did not give their intent to appear to give reason to the board as to why they would be heard. Someone's here.
Then we're down to adjournment.
One clarification, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. At the end of these, are we adjourning this meeting right now, or are we concluding for the year? And if we're concluding for the year, Is there a certain
Correct.
language that has to be done to conclude for the year, or that I don't know off the top of my head?
To clarify, we have no hearings, correct? No
This
hearings.
is it.
So this could be our meeting for the year.
This is it.
And is there a requirement to have certain language?
I would just advise that the motion contain that this is the conclusion of the board of review process for this year. Motion for concluding this meeting.
I move that we adjourn for the year based on the fact that we appear to have taken care of all our obligations for the year. So we have no further objections, and we heard all that was there.
With stellar work by everybody.
I second that
We have a
motion.
motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, that passes. We're adjourned for 2020, and thank you for your contributions. Hey, Jason,
Yes, sir.
as we're walking on the floor,
Meetings for June.
what is the, what's the status of the dark store?